G'day guys and gal, we all know the fairy tale. Salty sunburnt sausage men that knew how to manipulate dark matter met cosmic space toad gods, asked for sunscreen, and were told to lick the toad's cold-blooded balls. Kicking off the war in heaven that saw the Necrontyr smash before then becoming the Necrons via the Catan turning them into undead robots, and the rest is history. But just like the Epstein list, there is more to this story than meets the eye. The lore and origins of the Necrons is actually quite deep, with the Necrons and Old Ones actually being quite acquainted before they first waged war against one another. So let's go back 60 million years and look at the origins of the Necron, or the Necrontyr as they were known back then, and what biotransference actually was. Before we get started, boy do we have something epic for you. We're bringing back the foremost desired, best-selling, and famous Majorkill merch designs. We have the Get Up singlet, which was actually the first merch design where I incorporated artwork, and because I was unsure how it would go, we barely stocked many, so it sold out straight away, and I get at least one DM a week asking for it to return, so here you go. Then there is the legendary, best-selling, Only in Death singlet, which was worn by a famous pro wrestler, which is fucking awesome, and was by far our highest seller to date. Then we have a controversial t-shirt combo. Midnight Clad and Loyalty are returning, basically Thramis Crusade 2 Electric Boogaloo. Both of these are personal favorites of mine and sold like crazy, so they're back. Basically, all four of these designs are some of my favorites, and I even actually went so far as to hire some actual girls to model them, as I genuinely think that getting one of these for your missus as cool homeware would be awesome. They can even be t-shirt dresses. That is a large they're wearing in this shot, but the sizes go higher than that. How this works is that this sale will be alive for 10 days from now on. At the end of those 10 days, the sale will end, orders will close, and the supplier will be told how much to make in each size, so it's unlimited, but only for those 10 days. Merch will be fulfilled in a first come first serve format, so while I am very confident everything will be out before Christmas, the sooner you order, the sooner it comes. There will be no late game Black Friday discount on these, as they are a limited release. You can also tack on some leftover legacy merch for 25% off, or a mystery merch item for 30% off if you're feeling lucky. Link to everything will be below. Today we'll go over the origins of the Necrons, how they came to be, how biotransference actually happened, and fill in some other cool lore bits I bet you didn't know. Let's get into it. We gotta go back, I mean way back, to before femboys reigned supreme and before Harambe was even born, 60 million years ago. The galaxy was an interesting place, kind of like an evolutionary arms race. Whichever of the original races evolved the fastest would claim dominion over a more or less empty galaxy. There was obviously the Old Ones, who won that arms race, and ruled as galactic space toad gods who seeded the galaxy with life, creating benevolent psychic races, some in their own image. They were originally a reasonably peaceful race. They did not seek out war, but they were ready for it whenever it came. Some of their original creations were the Slan, basically demi-old ones, Jaqueros, those interesting orangutans who could randomly create extremely impressive technology, the Hrud, a race of pretty scary looking dudes who had almost complete mastery of time, like imagine a race of really ugly Time Lords, alongside countless other races we never learnt about because they all got their shit kicked in. After all, these initial races were not supposed to be warlike or survivors, more so just interesting. The Old Ones were on creative mode. However, the Old Ones weren't the only race to naturally evolve. There was also the Crave, a horrifying race of psychic aliens who were pure evil, as well as the Necrontyr. Now, whilst the Old Ones and the Crave were given near godlike psychic power, the Necrontyr were more or less psychically inert, similar to the Tau. Thus, all they had to work with was science, no shortcuts, no warp travel, no psychers. To make matters worse, their home planet was constantly getting cum blasted with intense solar radiation, which made them incredibly short-lived, so they lived these miserable, short, painful lives. However, eventually, slowly, painfully, their scientific knowledge evolved. They spent millennia trying to biohack their bodies to withstand the radiation. They spent another millennia figuring out how to travel between solar systems in slow-moving, dark matter-powered ships, eventually colonizing their own systems. However, due to some cruel joke, or just bad luck, their short-lived lives had become genetic. Even removed from their brutal sun, their lives are still short and shit. Now, many believe that the Necrontyr would encounter the Old Ones, petition for the secrets to longer life, get rejected, and then in their fury attack the Old Ones, but it actually goes deeper than that. See, there was a semi-recent retcon that is flying under the radar that chaos was actually present at this dawn of the galaxy, becoming a sentient force as soon as sentient life evolved. With the Old Ones, their races, and even the Necrontyr teaming up to fight chaos. They even devised a semi-permanent solution to containing chaos, that being to capture huge amounts of demons and lock them away on special prison worlds, thus not allowing them to be banished and return to the warp to reform. Instead, these demons, these shards of their chaos god, would be forever separated, thus the chaos gods would be forever forever weakened. After enough lost battles and enough demons locked away, Chaos backed off and took a back seat for a very long time. So the Necrontyr would have actually seen the Old Ones refusing to use their power to remove the curse of their short, shitty lives from the Necrontyr as a betrayal. The Necrontyr fought the monsters from the warp, but the Old Ones couldn't even return the favor. Now, I personally wasn't present for that meeting, so I don't know what the Old Ones actually said or if they offered a justification, but the way I see it, being these cold, reptilian cosmic gods made them a little bit lacking in the empathy department. The Old Ones were famous for their great plan, and it's unlikely the Necrontyr had any part in it, so the Old Ones simply would have just shrugged them off, happy to let them exist, but not willing to help them as they were not a creation of the Old Ones, thus not under their control. The Necrontyr were enraged and waged war against the Old Ones, partly due to personal reasons, but also massively due to the Necrontyr Empire being on the verge of collapse from civil war, so uniting against a common foe was a desperate attempt of the rulers to stop an internal collapse. Now, the Necrontyr were no slouches when it came to war. They had a large empire, countless soldiers, and impressive technology. The stuff the Necrons used for war wasn't just given to them by the Catan, in many cases it was their own inventions. However, they were a bunch of silly little sausages, and the Old Ones were overpowered, so the Necrontyr got absolutely walloped, lost most of their empire, and got confined to the Halo Stars, a shadow of their former selves. The Old Ones didn't even consider them a big enough threat to be worth wiping out. However, the Necrontyr still had plenty of personnel and planets. While in exile, they studied the local stars, hatred still in their hearts, and discovered something strange. A large, powerful, but unsentient force was feeding on the stars, like some sort of cosmic jellyfish parasite. The Necrontyr were confused, but they knew there was potential here, especially as they were able to date these creatures' existence at the dawn of the universe. They built massive necrodermis bodies, living metal, for these jellyfish to inhabit, which proceeded to give the jellyfish gods sentience. Thus, the Catan came into their own. One of the first Catan given a body was Mefretran, now known as the Deceiver, which sounds like a red flag, but that wasn't his name at the time. He convinced the Necrontyr that the Catan were a benevolent race of gods, lords of reality, who too were victims of the Old Ones, losing a war against them in ages past. Now, everything the Deceiver says should be taken with a grain of salt, but I actually believe that part. It is strange that putting a bunch of unsentient jellyfishes into statues would turn them into genocidal assholes hell-bent on rending the galaxy apart. I think they started as assholes, got clapped by the Old Ones who couldn't destroy them as destroying Catan causes massive issues in reality, so just reverted them into mostly harmless jellyfish. After ruling as the Necrontyr's asshole gods for a time, all the while stoking their hatred of the Old Ones and giving them access to even more advanced weaponry and technology, the Deceiver came to the Necrons' ruling council with an offer. They could be freed of their weak mortal shells, becoming living metal immortals like the Catan, while gaining the power to take vengeance against the Old Ones. The Silent King, leader of the Necrontyr, agreed, as did most of the Necrontyr race. They marched into the biofurnaces willingly, undergoing biotransference. Their bodies were destroyed and replaced with necrodermis, while their souls were consumed by the Catan, who decided souls were way yummier than stars. Not all the Necrontyr were down for this. Fair enough. Necrontyr, like Orokin the Diviner, actively protested the worship of the Catan, however the policy was that all Necrontyr were to be converted, so many were dragged kicking and screaming into biotransference. Trizin the Infinite expresses massive regret that he was one of the Necrons who dragged Orokin to a biofurnace, even though Trizin didn't have free will at the time. So here is where the rug was pulled. By doing biotransference, almost every Necron lost all sentience, with those that maintained it losing their free will. The Silent King, Lord of the Necrons, was given a command module that gave him full control of all Necron free will. Some maintained their personalities and consciousness, but they were still enslaved to the will of the Silent King. It's not entirely clear why the Catan didn't keep the command module for themselves, probably because they were incredibly arrogant and couldn't be fucked doing the micromanaging of the entire Necron Empire. Now you gotta remember that every single Necrontyr was turned into a Necron, including all non-combatants who are now warriors. So whilst they were a shadow of their former self, they now had 100% military output with no upkeep, no natural deaths, no requirement of food, water or rest, no morale issues, and 100% cohesion. They were a fucking insane army. Suddenly it was the Old Ones on the back foot, who then proceeded to create the Canib, a pretty scary xeno race known to have 10 limbs and are often described as festering, or whatever the Lovecraftian fuck that means, the Rashan, a now extinct race of psychic aliens, as well as the Eldar themselves. So if anyone thinks the Eldar are gay, just remember they were created as a warrior race to fight a war of gods. The Eldar's main advantage was that they could create their own gods who could counter the Catan on the battlefield, with numerous Catan being shattered not by the Necrons, but by the Eldar gods during the war in heaven itself. As the war raged on for millennia, the Old Ones became more desperate, thus they would create the Krorks, gigantic orc warriors who made Primarchs look like guardsmen. The Old Ones knew the Krorks would likely plague the galaxy for all time, but they made them anyway, such was their desperation. Eventually the Catan and the Necrons actually won. The Krorks were mostly crushed, the Elder was scattered and mostly hiding in the webway, pretty much all the old ones were gone in some way or another, and most of the old ones' races were obliterated. The warp was ripped into turmoil, with the war actually creating the Eye of Terror, which was then closed by the Necrons using warp pylons. However, the C'tan were their own worst enemy. Now the dominant force, they were manipulated by both the Deceiver and the Elder Trickster God to turn on each other. The strong C'tan began eating the weaker ones, until only a handful remained. These C'tan were wounded, bloated, and thought themselves invincible, so the Silent King took that as his chance for vengeance. Using the most fucked up, unimaginable weapons possible, he directed the Necrons to turn on their overlords, vengeance for manipulating them, turning them into these soulless husks, and using them for their own purposes. The C'tan was systematically shattered into shards and imprisoned, going from gods to Pokemon. The Necrons in turn were smashed and weakened, and at a similar time, the Elder began to rise again, reproducing and using the leftover Old One technology to empower themselves. The Necrons predicted that the Elder Empire would rule for 60 million years, but then something weird and gay would happen, so then they would fall. Thus the Necrons entered into a 60 million year sleep, all except the Silent King, who destroyed the command module, thus giving the Necrons their free will back, before going off into his own 60 million year exile to atone for what he had done to his people. In the current setting, the Necrons are reawakening, and so is their grievances. The Necrons fight each other all the time, it's the main thing holding them back, with many still salty at the Silent King and refusing his call to join him. Many of them want to reverse biotransference, many of them prefer to remain as immortal, undying robots, preferring their dull but pain-free and permanent existences over a return to pain and death. So there you have it, the entire origins of the Necrons and biotransference. Not bad, eh? If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up some Majorkill merch, only available for 10 days, you do not want to miss out. These are the best merch pieces we've ever produced. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more undying content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.